Good afternoon. Thank you very much, Alex. I'm pleased to be here. And today I thought I might share a secret from my past. When I was about 7, I used to dream about creating and presenting my own TV show. After school, I watched Tony Hart transform morph on my screen and imagined my future on TV. The fact that I was absolutely hopeless at art never appeared to me to be a barrier to my prospective career. And then one day, I nearly got my great breakthrough. When I was about 8, I attended a dance class, and I was just as bad at dance as I was art. And the whole class auditioned to be in a TV advert. Unbelievably, I reached the final round, and my glamorous future flashed in front of me. But that inevitable tap on the shoulder, asking me to leave the stage, quickly ended my not yet even burgeoning career. And my dreams of the starry world of film and TV came to an absolute crashing end when I started my law degree. And I know that millions of people across the country, young and old, share that dream about being involved in what is one of our most exciting and glamorous industries. And where better place to have that ambition? Here, in the UK, our TV is genuinely world-leading. And it has been world-leading for years, from the days of 4 to 5 channels to the current all-you-can-eat world of television we're in now. Today, in 2023, we produce the best of the best. Many of the most celebrated shows of this golden era have been made here in the UK, written here in the UK, and shot here in the UK. Shows like Sex Education, The Crown, and Luther, they've become huge hits, not just in this country, but all over the world. And with imitation being the sincerest form of flattery, many of our great TV shows and formats have spawned remakes all over the world, from Love Island and The Office to Bake Off and Ghosts. You have created a great environment for our TV excellence, one which discovers and nurtures outstanding talent, one where creativity is given license to flourish every day. Everyone should take a quick look at IMDb's top 100 TV shows voted for by users. 26 were first shown on British screens. British-produced shows like Peaky Blinders, Chernobyl, and David Attenborough's nature documentaries all featured in the top 10. Our public service broadcasters have been able to bring the same levels of creativity to their programming as streaming services backed by some of the biggest businesses in the world. You see countless programs from Happy Valley and Forgotten to Taskmaster and Derry Girls. Meanwhile, companies like Netflix continue to underline the dominance of our TV and film industry in Europe, spending $6 billion making TV shows and films in Britain over the last 4 years. Investment that has given us zeitgeist-defining shows from The Crown and Top Boy to Tinder Swindler. But despite all this excellence, it would be foolish to ignore the enormous challenges that you face in remaining competitive. I know that the ongoing strikes in the US are having a significant impact on many working in the industry in the UK. The government is committed to our film and high-end TV sector, and we want to ensure that it's in the best possible position to bounce back once the US strikes are resolved. At the same time, we know that new technologies are and will continue to drive changes in users' habits and impact the market landscape. You only need to look at a handful of Ofcom's figures to appreciate the seismic scale of change. They show the number of TV programs pulling in 4 million or more viewers has halved since 2014. They show live programs like news shows or soaps as seeing steep declines in the viewer numbers across the board. They show that TikTok, for the second year in a row, was the fastest growing source of news in the UK. We know that artificial intelligence is already beginning to transform the way we create and consume media and content. The government has an interest in this because your success is success for our economy, with the jobs and growth you support, and your success is also success for our society, because the content you create helps to entertain, challenge, console, and educate. So it's our job in government to support you, to ensure that in this changing landscape, we protect, we preserve, and we enhance the existing ecosystem that you have all created here in the UK. And I see my role as threefold. First, maximising the potential of the creative industries, including TV, helping you to grow your revenues, invest and spur growth across the UK. Secondly, giving you the support that you need to navigate this changing landscape. And thirdly, ensuring at all times we champion media freedoms. Today's theme in this conference is about choice. I see choice as opportunity. I want to talk about these three priorities within this context to enable you to seize the opportunities that are available. And I want to expand on those three roles. So first, potential. Since I was appointed as your Culture Secretary 7 months ago, I have sought to maximise the potential of the creative industries, which includes TV. In February, I worked with the Chancellor to ensure we not only continue the high-end TV tax relief and other creative reliefs, but we actually increase them in the form of the new audiovisual expenditure credit. And in June, I published our sector vision, which is a collaboration with the industry, in particular the Creative Industries Council. This vision set out our ambition for the creative industries as a whole, an ambition to grow the sector by £50 billion, create 1 million new jobs, and a pipeline of talent, all by 2030. And I'm now working with the industry to deliver on that commitment through the funding of creative industries clusters across the country, like TV in Leeds, gaming in Dundee and Bristol, backing innovation in the TV industry with funding for collaborations like the one we've just announced between the National Television and Film School, Royal Holloway University of London, and Pinewood for the development of green screens, and investing in developing the pipeline of talent with approval for Brit School North in Bradford in August to help us bring through the next Tom Holland or the next Amy Winehouse. These are just 3 examples of how we are investing over £300 million since the last spending review. And they build on years of support by the government, building on the tax reliefs that support and incentivise culturally British production, like the high-end TV reliefs and the audiovisual and cultural reliefs. Building on the direct funding through initiatives like the Global Screen Fund, as well as the significant support we gave throughout COVID through the £1.5 billion Culture Recovery Fund, and the hugely successful Film and TV Restart Scheme that supported more than 100,000 jobs for cast and crew on more than 1,000 productions. I'm proud that the government has for years recognised the importance of our TV industry. Secondly, as I highlighted, we need to make sure you have the framework in which you can remain globally competitive in this changing world. That's why we're bringing forward the Media Bill, which we've already drafted and consulted on. This bill updates the system in which public service broadcasters operate, future-proofs it, and levels the playing field. It ensures that we sustain both public service broadcasters and the radio sector. It does this by making sure public service broadcasters' apps like BBC iPlayer, ITVX, as well as STV Player in Scotland and Channel 4, the Channel 4 app, My5, and S4C's Click in Wales are always easy to find and watch, whether you're on a smart TV or using a streaming stick. The way we've approached the bill has been in a consultative fashion, but I do recognise that some concerns remain, including about extending content regulation to video on-demand services. But what we're saying is this, is that it should be the same when you're watching TV, the same rules that apply to a new Channel 4 series or a new Sky documentary, they should be the same rules applied across the board. The bill is about ensuring we have the right playing field in place for all parts of the TV ecosystem to thrive. This is part of our work to help bring TV into the digital age. But we recognise there's more to do. Because we recognise that internet-provided TV is growing. 74% of homes now have a smart TV connected to the internet. And this has spawned hundreds of new, mostly internet-based TV channels, which have created yet another innovative way for audiences to enjoy their favourite shows. But whilst this shift is an exciting one, it's our job to look at those channels that fall outside our existing regulations and to make sure people are not left behind by this move to digital. That's why we're going to consult on whether we need to extend regulation to these unregulated channels and electronic programming guides, and if so, how. And my starting point in looking at this will always be that any change to regulations must strike a balance between protecting people, particularly the young and vulnerable, while protecting freedom of speech and not unduly burdening the TV industry. I know that this challenge of the move to internet TV is something that you are thinking about with the announcement of Freely earlier this week. As we focus on the future, our attention must also be on making sure that people are not left behind. Because new ways of consuming TV should not come at the expense of those who still enjoy terrestrial television. Free-to-view television is a vitally important part of our television landscape, and this government wants to encourage the sector to keep embracing innovation and technological development, but we're not going to pull the rug from under the devoted audiences of Freeview channels. We want terrestrial television to remain accessible for the foreseeable future. And at the same time, we really want to build a clear picture of what the future of TV looks like. So today, I can confirm that we're launching a new programme of work on the future of TV distribution, alongside a call for evidence from Ofcom, which it will publish later in the autumn. My department will undertake a 6-month research project looking at changing viewing habits and technologies that will impact how shows are brought to our screen, both now and in the decades to come, acknowledging always the importance of access. I recognise that the future of TV is not just about pipes and wires, the way it appears on our screens, and how people access it. We're also working within my department, with industry and with Ofcom, to consider the impact of specific new technologies like AI and to shape an evidence base that can guide future policy making. It's our job to ensure we strike the right balance between supporting innovation and protecting rights holders. As part of that, we're engaging closely with the Intellectual Property Office and the Department for Science, Innovation and Technology to ensure that we strike that right balance. While it's clear that AI is rapidly developing technology, I want to assure you that one of my priorities is to make sure we protect and maintain the integrity of a high-quality news output. In the coming weeks, we'll be growing that evidence base with a number of roundtables on AI to discuss what it means for our media and what it means for our creative industries. And finally, why is all this so important? And that's because your work retains and enhances our media freedom. TV is an enormous industry. Together with film, it brings in more than £18 billion for the UK economy and supports almost 300,000 jobs across the UK. It's an industry that is there to entertain and inform, but it is so much more than that. A television industry which is able to broadcast, to produce, and to distribute fearless truth-telling in its news, uncomfortable issues in its documentaries, or produce dramas that highlight challenging real-life issues, is one that reveals behind it a strong democracy that is the mark of a free country. We all know the playbook in countries that aren't free. The first thing a dictator does is take control of the airwaves, because these leaders know that if you succeed in stifling universal debate, you can control the narrative. That's why you're all so important to our present and to our future. Media freedom is central to our values as a country and to mine as your culture secretary. And that is partly why I've always enjoyed watching the political dramas that you make, whether that's House of Cards, The Politician's Wife, Roadkill, The Diplomat, A Very British Scandal. They are all so brilliant. And I don't even mind that all these programmes often have as their theme a Tory politician, always unscrupulous, who inevitably ends up booted out of office, in prison, or dead. Because that is one of the things that makes our country great, the freedom that you have to make programmes. I should say that I have noticed in most of these that there is usually a female heroine, often political, sometimes a lawyer, who always outwits all the men, which is probably the real reason I've enjoyed them all. Now, before I close, I do want to address the serious allegations that came to light over the weekend concerning Russell Brand. Those allegations are deeply shocking. And it's right that the police are encouraging anyone who believes they may have been a victim of a sexual offence to come forward. It's also right that organisations involved in his employment conduct conduct transparent investigations into whether complaints were made or concerns were raised and what action, if any, was taken. The nature of these allegations means it would be inappropriate to comment further at this stage. But I do want to briefly touch on the wider culture within our film and TV industry. This is an industry that young people, like 7-year-old me, grew up dreaming of working in. One where the sky's the limit for talent. And it is incumbent on all of us to make sure that this industry is synonymous with talent, opportunity, and inclusivity, not the scandals of Me Too. TV studios, production facilities, and offices need to be places where people feel safe. Places where working cultures are responsible and accountable and don't allow for possible abuses of power. Places where everybody feels able to speak up, no matter how junior, and where leaders never turn a blind eye. And I would urge all of you, as leaders in your industry, to look hard at the cultures and processes in your own organisations and lead change if change is needed. But I'd like to finish properly by thanking all of you for the work that you've done. The work you've done to build not just a world-class TV industry, but a world-leading one. It's a testament to your talent, your ingenuity, and your commitment. The Prime Minister and Chancellor have identified the creative industries as one of the 5 priority growth sectors, which we will focus on as a government. And you are an essential part of that. We want to work with you, not just to retain that position, but to build on it. And as your Culture Secretary, I promise to be your champion in government to support you to maximise your potential and thrive in this changing landscape. And I look forward to doing that with you in the months and years ahead. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think you forgot that the politicians in a lot of those series are often also getting a lot of sex, but normally the men. I think your speechwriters missed that bit out. So if you were really, I'm going to do a couple questions, and then we're going to throw to the audience for questions. So if you really were going to go home to your hotel room tonight and watch something on television, what would you switch on? You don't have to watch the news and see what other politicians have said today. What would you switch on to relax?
Oh, well, I'm constantly watching the news. We are all constantly watching the news. So I don't need to go home and watch the news, although I do, of course. So at the moment, we're watching Ted Lasso. We're always a little bit behind everybody else. So when everyone else says it's a great program, then we start watching it. So I think we're on season 2 of Ted Lasso.
But that's what you're watching at home?
That's what we're watching at home.
On a competitive service. So let me move on. Right, creative industries. Creative industries overall, not just film and television, is one of the UK's biggest success stories, accounting for 7.1% now of all UK jobs, employing 2.4 million people last year, and as you said, about 300,000 in our industry. And it's grown massively, hasn't it? But a lot of the things that have grown have been studios and production of other services in this country and trade. And some of the things that have grown have been actual IP ownership and building value up in companies and building kind of the ability to sell those companies or do more with them. Does it worry you, or do you think about the balance the government should strike in encouraging those 2 bits of it? Because of course the service side, like the studios, blah, 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 they could end up like the car industry, like people manufacture their cars here for a while and then they move off somewhere else. And is that something that DCMS worries about the balance between the parts of our industry, the kind of work that goes on here versus the actual IP creation and building of value in companies?
So Alex, I think that all those elements are critical. So we are building more studio space, and the government is supporting that, encouraging it. And the statistic is that in a couple of years, we will have more studio space in the UK than there is in LA. And we see that in government as a hugely positive thing, because that gives jobs to local people. And if there's studios that are regional, that gives significant jobs, regionally across the country. We also need to ensure, that we encourage creativity in terms of production. And the interesting thing that I hear across the board is that, there is a huge amount of creativity and independence that there isn't in other countries, or we're much better at it. But, there's a thing in the UK that we shouldn't, we need to make sure that what we create stays here and the value that we have created stays in the UK. So you talk about IP, we're world leading in protecting IP. We need to ensure that those rights do stay here, the value stays here. And I know the Chancellor's doing a lot of work, across the board in ensuring that, companies as a whole, they scale up here and, they grow here and they IPO here, not abroad. So I would say, a broad answer to your question, we need to make sure all of this is retained in the UK, or at least as much as possible.
And I think that will take more thinking about in the future, because when things get big here, they tend to be bought by people from elsewhere. Okay, now I'm going to ask about the BBC. The BBC haven't put me up to this, obviously. But obviously, for the BBC, with the licence fee declining and inflation and all the services that they're meant to provide, and you're busy on the latest government review of BBC's funding. How do you feel about that? How do you feel about things like the fact the BBC have to make all of these difficult decisions of what they're going to cut? We read in the press that Newsnight, for example, a programme that does immense investigations and continues that work. And I know from the dispatches on Russell Brand that that's 3 or 4 years of work on an investigation. How do you feel about the fact that they have to make those trade-offs, and that, you know, when you talk about dictators in countries reducing the power of the media, we all know that the BBC is one of the things that we're proudest of here. How do you feel about the trade-offs and the cuts that they're having to make already? Or do you feel that's their problem?
Well, I see Tim over there, and I think he would say those are questions for him. So, as in the operational...
would say it's his
there's two answers to that question. The first question is, the first answer is that the operational decisions of the BBC are questions for the BBC. They're certainly not for government. And, you know, Tim and his board have to make those decisions in relation to, you know, what they make and how they make it and what they put out. My job as a culture secretary is to ensure that the BBC is funded fairly and continues to thrive. So we are looking at the funding review, and we're looking at that if we take a step back for a number of reasons. You mentioned the licence fee. The licence fee is £159, and that's not an insubstantial amount of money for many people, and we need to make sure that it's fair. You know, secondly, we've talked about the media landscape and how it's changing, and you talked about in your question the fact that, you know, the number of people who are paying the licence fee is going down, and the media landscape is changing, and it's my job to make sure that the BBC is fit for the future. So in those two circumstances, we need to make sure that we look very carefully at how the BBC is funded.
And you've said before that you're going to do a review of the BBC funding, and that will be independent. And how is that sort of commitment to independence standing up, or is it yet to be determined how it will be independent?
Well, I think you're referring to a statement my predecessor made. So we are looking carefully internally at the moment in relation to the BBC and how it is funded. We will be working out what evidence we need to collect. Some of that will be external evidence, and, you know, sure, I'll be updating people on that review at various points.
Fair enough. Right, I'm going to come to the audience. So if you've got a question for me, well, not for me, actually, for her, get ready. Oh, the first hand up, it's John McVeigh. John, which is traditional at this conference, that the first hand up is John McVeigh.
Thank you very much, John McVeigh from PACT. Secretary of State, nice to see you here. Thank you very much for coming along. I think Alex asked a very good question, and to me it sort of strikes at the heart of our very successful TV industry and our very successful inward investment industry, which has been, you know, TV production and film production, mostly coming from North America, but not right now because of the strikes in America. One of the least successful parts of our audiovisual economy right now is indigenous feature film production, which has been in decline for many, many years. We've produced a number of reports, and indeed the BFI did last year. We are trying to find some solutions to that, which we'd like to discuss with the Chancellor, because we think if we had a more vibrant and thriving, commercially successful feature film industry in the year, we may not suffer the peaks and troughs when America has a cold. So is that something that you'd be interested in discussing further?
Well, the obvious answer to that is yes, John. It's always good to chat with you. And just on your first point about foreign direct investment, there's a really interesting statistic that the creative industries get 10% of the UK's foreign direct investment, and they're only 5% of the economy. So we do get significant inward investment here, but you're absolutely right that we need to grow in all ways. I'm very happy to continue our discussions on this and many other subjects.
I think, John, that's an offline question answer. Right, who's got a question next? Oh, yes, Tara.
Hi, Tara Conlan. I'm here for the RTS. It's great to have a culture secretary who not only turns up but actually gives a speech recognising the contribution that the sector makes to the economy. And I just wanted two things. talking about how you're going to level the playing field for traditional TV and internet TV, will you also give the PSBs significant prominence, not just appropriate? And you talked quite rightly about the culture of TV, but with so many freelancers out of work at the moment, it's about 3/4 in some areas, how can those people who have precarious jobs be expected to stand up and point out when talent is misbehaving if they're worried about their jobs in quite a precarious time for the industry at the moment?
Sorry, there were two parts to that question. Just remind me the first part. Prominence.
And freelancers.
Prominence. Well, we're bringing forward the media bill, which I referred to in my speech, and one of the key parts of the media bill is about prominence. So it's to make sure that on your smart TV, you will have, BBC, ITV, all those entities, the public service broadcasters, will have prominence on those screens. It's a core part of the bill, so absolutely. In terms of supporting the industry, in the sector vision that we published, we referenced work that the industry was doing that we were supporting, both in terms of the precarious nature, how people are treated in the flexible working space, but also the importance of the second aspect that I discussed, and is very relevant given the allegations that have been made over the weekend, the work that the industry is putting in relation to making sure that their offices and places of work are safe. And as a government, these are the issues that industry must solve, but we will support and work with you on them.
Thank you. I've got one more audience question, number 4 up there, and then I've got a last one for you.
Hi, Secretary of State. Daniel Toole, Chairman of IAXA Global. You, I think, to many people in the room, were pleased that you're supporting the industry with funding and rhetoric. I wonder if you might comment on 2 things. I think it's great you're putting money behind where your mouth is. 300 million is great, but we need a lot more capital. That's going to have to come from private sources. I think it's great that it's double the amount, 10 versus 5%. Maybe you can comment on what more you're thinking about doing to encourage more private investment. Secondly, with an election looming shortly, I think select committees are great. Maybe you could comment on areas where you have cross-party support for your plans. And if you have time, maybe you'd comment on diversity, particularly at the board level.
3 questions. Which is the most important question? Why don't you take them in any order you like?
So the first question was in relation to private investment. So what we try and do as a government, what I've tried to do in the sector vision, is to ensure that where government puts money, it's putting money where it's going to leverage more private investment. So the £77 million that we got in June from the Chancellor will actually leverage £250 million from the private sector. So what we're doing is creating clusters across the country. We know, because industry has done some fabulous work, the Creative Industries Council, Peter Basil gets done an amazing amount of work to look at how do we grow, where do we grow, how do you grow best? And it's about collaborating between academia, having a number of your creative industries in the same place. And so one of our pots of money is absolutely about that. And that's how we leverage private investment. As well as, I must say, I think we need to do more in relation to soft power. We need to be exhibiting way more the excellence and brilliance that you have abroad, so that we not only encourage more foreign investment, direct investment, but also, everyone knows how brilliant the UK is and our values. Cross-collaboration. So, look, it is really important that what we do delivers for the people and for the sectors that we represent. So everything that I'm doing, whether it's in the creative industry space, whether it's in the football space, what I do is make sure that I am responding to your needs. I am your representative in government. I'm bringing forward legislation which you, the sector, have asked for, and I'm also protecting consumers and the public. So much of that is uncontroversial. And I will always try and get cross-party support. Sometimes people take annoying political points because that's politics. But I will always, in this role and in others, make sure that we get broad support for the work that we're doing.
Thank you. I'm going to ask you one last quick question. We talked this morning about changing viewing habits of the young. We talked about the fact that we have new research that shows that the PSB brands don't mean so much to them anymore, hence prominence, but also that they have anxiety around the loss of control that they feel when watching particularly social short form that's algorithmically served to them. And what's your approach? I know that you're particularly interested in these issues for young people, so what's your approach as a government or as a department to that, and where do you think we should go with it?
So you're right, Alex. I feel very passionately about supporting young people. You know, I talked about the potential of the creative industries, and one of my passions and one of the things that I want to do is make sure that we exploit and support the potential of every young person in the country, whatever their starting point. So I think I'm also in favour of media plurality. So, you know, short form content has its place and is interesting. I know this because I got 2 teenagers. Long form content, I think, gives more discussion, ability to learn, puts different points of view. I think there's a world off screen as well, which I really support because and something that I'm working on separately to the creative industries. The evidence shows that if we really want to get young people well, you know, from a mental health perspective, from a physical perspective, if we want to ensure that they build their resilience and come out as fulfilling human beings, it's really important that they have social interaction. It's really important that they do things that they've never done before. So there's evidence that shows adventures away from home are really important to building life skills. You know, mentoring is really important. Youth clubs are really important. So a lot of the work that I'm doing, not in the creative industry space, is also about ensuring that young people can fulfill their potential, whatever it is, outside the home and have a fantastic time.
Thank you very much. Well done for coming, and thank you very much for your time.